Really important topic, talking about building staffs in-house for DTC brands, as well as looking at outside agencies. So to start, I thought that each of our panelists could introduce themselves, what they do for each of the companies that they're with, how long they've been there, and just give a quick introduction.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Jadey. I head up brand for Curology. So a little bit about Curology, in case you haven't heard of us. We are a custom skincare company based out of San Francisco. So the hero product is a custom prescription cream, and it addresses skin concerns ranging from acne to anti-aging. A little bit about how it works. You sign up, there's a free trial, you answer a skin quiz, and snap a few selfies. And then on the other side, a dermatology provider will kind of like write up a prescription, and we send your custom product on your way, and it's a subscription model as well. So a little context on kind of where we are today. Anything that is non-performance based falls under brand, and we really didn't focus too much on brand until 8 months ago, with me joining to lead up all the efforts.
Hello, I'm Lori Gatto. I'm the VP of Marketing at TomBoyX. I joined TomBoyX about 7 months ago. If you haven't heard of us, we're based in Seattle. We are gender-neutral underwear. We're our hero product, our boy shorts. We sell a lot of underwear, bras, but we've kind of come at it from more of a human agenda model where we fit all sizes from extra small up to 4X. Really kind of that gender neutrality story where, we fit every body. We, of course, have comfortable underwear. A lot of companies are out there selling comfortable underwear, but ours has kind of been really kind of from the DNA that we fit who you are, because fitting in was never the point. With that being said, we're seeing strong growth. We've been around since about 2014. I joined the company to really kind of elevate some of the marketing that we've been doing. So unlike Jadey, our marketing team is me overseeing site, creative. So we're a small team doing a lot, but it's been exciting. So glad to be here.
Great, thanks. Hi, everybody. My name is Jennifer Muse. I work for General Mills. Obviously, we're all familiar with General Mills. We've grown up with the General Mills family of brands, starting from when you're very, very young as a kid eating Cheerios out of the Ziploc bag, all the way through Pillsbury, Betty Crocker. Where the company is today and why I actually work for them is last May, we established a new e-commerce division. We're a very lean team of 10. It's very interesting because you think of like e-commerce new. General Mills is finally getting on the bandwagon that they need to evolve e-commerce and define what that is. And for me, in my role as the leader of CRM, it's really about, okay, so the analytics and things that we've done so far have been really just sales driven. So now it's about, let's really focus on what is the consumer journey for each of these brands, and then not only that, but how can we evolve and have more cohesion between the General Mills family of brands. It's very challenging, obviously, because we have several hundred brands, and they each have their own brand teams. So my goal and my role and our group's role is to really try to work with the brands to understand what their consumer journey is, and then again, work to do that within the family. So that's what I do.
Excellent. So to jump right in, when it comes to formulating a staff in-house, for marketing, for media, for creative, where do you see the importance of building internally, and how have you done it here at your current company, or potentially even at companies you've been with in the past? You want to start, Jadey? Everyone can discuss.
So like many DTC brands, we focused primarily on scaling. So marketing, the way that we've built up to team was really, we just had 2 marketers do all of our media buying and optimization in-house, took a lot of those learnings and kind of scaled it cross-functionally onto all the different channels and such. So we are more biased in bringing everything in-house. We believe that naturally you have an advantage of, the direct consumer relations and building that journey. So we've kind of approached like the performance size as such. We also built an in-house creative team to support, a lot of like supporting all like the asset creation side of it, and we've really been able to leverage that on the brand side as well. So again, the process hasn't been linear. From times when we didn't have our core competency, we did bring in agencies on a project basis to really learn about kind of like what kind of talent do we need, what kind of processes do we need. So at any given time, we're always constantly assessing like the cost benefit of bringing it in-house to outside, like outsourcing. So it's a fluid process. It's been that way for us.
Excellent. Do you want to add to that, Lori, potentially?
Yeah, so I've had the pleasure of coming to a very small direct-to-consumer company, coming from a company, Blue Nile, prior to this, where we were a much more established, larger company. We'd been around for 20 years. So I have had a different stance coming to a company of the size I'm at right now versus where I had been before. I, too, was kind of in the mindset of building that internal expertise in-house, building that knowledge base, really kind of playing on that operational excellence. But coming to a TomBoyX, where we are smaller, where we are seeing tremendous growth, we have had to rely more on agencies to help scale, especially on the performance side. Like a lot of companies out here, we've relied a lot on our scale from social and search. And as the company's growing, we've been working with an agency out of Seattle that's allowed us to scale. This agency has been able to bring some of the creative help that we need, because in social you've got to be changing your creative out quite frequently. And then on the media side, if we would have originally brought in those roles, especially in Seattle, I'm sure we're not the only market, those roles, finding the experience can be quite expensive, and then finding the creative resources. So the agency has allowed us to scale and grow, and as we've gotten larger, we're now looking to start to build some of that expertise in-house. But that kind of starts with recruiting and finding good talent, and we're in a market where it's very difficult to find those type of talent, but that's kind of the next wave, is to bring that in. But I would say on the creative side, which is a different lens, when the company originally started, our founders did actually enlist the help on a project basis, brand help, to really establish the brand and bring in some of that expertise, and really kind of lay down the foundation of where we can build the brand on. But since then, we have built a lot of that expertise, from an art director to some designers. We just hired a content manager, where I really feel that, because being a brand that's really kind of leading with brand first, having that internal brand voice and building that so we can continue to build that out across all the channels is important. So that has been kind of the first layer of really building that voice in-house. And then how do we kind of scale with different platforms, where some technology partners and some agency partners are going to continue to be in our near future. So it's kind of balancing that out.
Great. And Jennifer?
Yes, so I would say my situation is obviously very different, because I work for a food company, and we have all the brands, as I mentioned, as you know. So in-house solutions, I should start by saying it really does vary brand to brand in terms of what we use or build in-house versus what is outsourced, and what technology companies that we do lean on. A lot of our more established brands definitely have built the solutions in-house, similar to what Lori was saying, just for efficiencies. And also, General Mills is obviously very storied, and they like to have full control, especially from a brand perspective. Each of the brands have creative in-house. They really want to own that voice and own how we are communicating with our consumers across every channel, be it online, be it offline, be it social, being packaging, which is obviously very important, product innovation. In terms of outsourcing out of house, or externally rather, especially with the newer brands that we've acquired, such as Blue Buffalo, which, for those of you who are not familiar, it's a higher-end dog and cat food business, so still fits within food, but we thought, let's build it out and let's expand to the family by bringing this brand into the fold. So they actually have brought with them Salesforce, so they have a relationship there. As I started with my team, I've worked very extensively with Salesforce in the past and really believe in what the technology can do. Shout out again to Salesforce team here. And especially from a CRM perspective. So we do, some of the other brands do have some CRM, not a lot, but I very strongly feel that we really need an agency like Salesforce that can really bring the cohesion across channels, so and also the analytics. So building out the customer journeys, as I started this conversation with, I personally don't think that we have the capabilities or the resources in-house, because it becomes a fight of like, okay, who takes priority? Do we want to build this for Cheerios? Well, Cheerios is one of our biggest brands, so if they have an ask, they're always going to have that prioritization in terms of getting work done, and so that is a detriment to some of the other smaller brands where it's like, well, you're like a fraction of what General Mills' revenue is. So I guess my answer would be that we do in-house. I think it's right to have brand control, but externally, I do think that to evolve from a CRM perspective, we are going to need to lean on some partnership.
Great. And can you shed some light on at what point in the life stage of a brand, either size or how many months or years it's been around, where you might look at spending more in-house to hire talent versus external agencies? Is there any correlation from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I'll answer that because I have come from a company that was much more established to a younger company where our revenues are much smaller. So I think size can be a factor. Early on when TomBoyX started, as I mentioned earlier, not to repeat myself, but to hire the expertise and the salaries associated with handling, let's say, paid social or Surge or some of our other advertising programs would have been a lot for a company of TomBoyX's size early on. On top of that, you need a technology, bidding platform as well. And so, we work with an engine that's, we pay a % of media spend, so it has allowed us to have some months where, being in startup mode where your budgets may not be as big as, future months, working with an agency in that model has allowed us to scale. But as we've gotten bigger and the company is growing, we're now at the point where we can start to bring in that talent, afford that talent, and build in, kind of that operational excellence inside. Coming into TomBoyX too, we lacked technology, analytics help, and part of the last 6 months has really kind of been building out those tools. But prior to this, I was at Blue Nile, and I came in, and the company had been around 20 years. Everything was managed in-house. We'd built our own attribution tool, and having it in-house actually in that worked well for us. So.
That's great. And I was going to ask a little bit about analytics attribution because just in speaking with different brands from my own perspective, it seems as if as it gets way more complicated in that space, there are a number of brands that are doing it in-house, but is that an area that outside agencies can provide specific support? In what way have you experienced that or are looking at it from your perspective?
I can take that one. So we actually have a blend. So the challenge with food also is that you do your marketing and then we're pushing to stores, be it online or offline, and so the analytics part becomes very challenging. We rely a lot on Nielsen, on their data, and then also obviously the different channels and the different grocery stores or grocery outlets, Amazon again, we rely on their analytics as well. On my team, as I mentioned, that was newly formed, we have 2 analysts that were pulled in because it is really complex to tie together the consumer data and how effective or efficient each of our marketing channels are to actually driving sales and where we can build that out. As I mentioned before, Salesforce, I think that's a great strength as well, because we'll be able to see as we start to implement more robust CRM initiatives, how effective those channels are and how at each of the levels of the touch points, how the consumer one-to-one is responding. Like, do they want to hear from you through email, or are they more on social channels and things like that? So I think that it requires, at least from my perspective and my company, a blend of in-house expertise as well as outsourcing for the more robust data analytics.
Yeah, I want to add a little bit to what you had mentioned about the stages. I think that in terms of a company's like life cycle, the most critical periods are usually around like the startup as well as the growth phase. I think the way that we think about it is we balance input and output. So it's kind of like that delicate dance of, you know, how quickly are you scaling and are you able to accommodate those business needs? For us, it's thinking about the opportunity cost, and if we're able to be efficient in, you know, growing that business in-house versus outsourcing. To Lori's point about like hiring for talent, to find that right person with the expertise and in the vertical, and all comes with obviously a really high price tag. A little kind of off topic, a little tangent on how we handle and how think about recruiting is we take pride in actually talking about how we've built the entire company almost based off of like summer interns. And the way that we think about recruiting is we're looking for people who are relentless in problem solving, and we believe that a lot of the tenacity with how they think through problems are transferable. So a lot of times we hire for potential, and when I talk about hiring interns, and what ends up happening is our success rate has been around like 70% converting interns into full-time roles that, you know, they might not have any idea like what they're working on, but it's the ramping up of it, and it's their propensity to want to learn, and that has allowed us to scale a lot of different avenues.
Yeah, I think what's neat about that, and I think a lot of us have probably felt that, is they learn your brand first, so you can really teach them about, you know, your specific brand, learning the competition versus coming from somewhere else. So I think that's a huge advantage. Appreciate you shedding light on that. And then for the panel, so when it comes to specific roles, when it comes to social, search, programmatic digital display, traditional media, et cetera, are there specific ways in which agencies have been successful, or you're open to looking at agencies, or where it really makes the most sense to focus on in-house hires? Anyone want to grab that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends. So like right now, we're stable in what we've got running on social and search, but we want to scale up into some other areas. So as a startup, you know, we're getting some funding coming in, so it's like, okay, now we've got to hit the ground, we've got some money to spend. And as we build on top of where we're at, you know, in tandem, I am looking for people, but I am also looking to bring in some technology solutions, some more strategic partners to kind of help us lay the foundation and build some learnings. But I think there are times where you need to pulse it in, where you might just not have the resources or the technology structure, or, you know, we're pretty rudimentary where I'm at right now, so I'm going to have to bring some of that in. And even at Blue Nile, as we were expanding some of our channels and looking at different technology stacks, it was looking externally where we knew we would never be able to get to, you know, market fast enough to start, you know, implementing. But
anything to add, Jennifer? Where you?
Yeah, I think I've touched on it a little bit. It's a huge challenge for a lot of our brands because they're so thin on internal resources, and I'll give an example. So Blue Buffalo, as I mentioned, they have so much that they want to do. Their social team consists of one gal, and so she can obviously clearly only do so much, and so there's so much more that they want to do, especially with generating content and being sort of not just like, hey, we've got this pet food, but being like, you know, we know the challenges of you know, having a dog or a cat, and like at different life stages, and maybe they get older, they get more mature, they have health issues. So trying to be not just like, hey, here's food, and here's why you should pay like 10x what you would pay if you bought just Purina and a mass market brand. So really trying to evolve that. I think that I'm trying to, and my team, we're trying to make the case for why it is important to be best in class, and we can't do everything ourselves. So we definitely do need to rely on tech companies to, basically offset our shortcomings.
Anything, Jadey, from a brand perspective specifically? Because I know it's a little bit different from your role versus more of the performance side.
Yeah, so how we lay out kind of the strategy for the rest of the year is getting really tactical here, but we kind of lay out the key pillars, what we want to focus our time on, and then we do all the weighted averages and everything, get all the stakeholders, and then we kind of come up with that list of what we deem we want, like our top priorities that we are more likely to handle in-house. And then when it comes to more of like the tactical execution, right? Like for example, on brand side, do we want to be doing the pitches for PR? Probably not. That's when we would work with an agency. So it's, just figuring out, again, like priorities. Where is your time best spent? And then going that way.
That's great. So is there an optimal mix, or is there a holy grail in figuring out, how outside agencies and internal staff can work together? I know, like for example, from a social perspective, it's so complex these days. Influencer marketing's a part of that. The community's so important. On the other hand, tools, technology, data are so important. And that goes even for search and other areas of brand building and also performance. Anything that you can mention in terms of examples of how the teams have worked together, internal and agency partners?
I can take that. I mean, because I've kind of in that environment right now, and I don't know if there is what I would call the perfect blend, because I think every company's different. Your staffing needs are different. Your internal talent's different. But the one thing we've really tried to, I think in one of the earlier, it talked about breaking down the silos, and that is so important. And that means communication across even our agency partners. Our agency partners, as I mentioned on some of the performance side, are very tied in with, for example, our email CRM manager, because we're building lists, we're sharing some of the learnings that we're learning on our email side with our external agency, and so making sure that when you are working with partners, they're integrated in part of your planning process, they're part of your overall company goals, and I think that was one of the things that worked the best, is that let's make sure, because when I started, they were marching to a different goal than we were looking at internally. And so bringing in that kind of united, KPIs and what they're tracking to, and making sure they've got, the holistic view into what's happening inside the company. But to me, it's been, if you are working partners, they are your business partners. They're just not a vendor. Like, get them in your office. Make sure they're part of your weekly calls. Making sure they're getting exposure, to other stakeholders inside the company can work really well.
Thank you. And just to finish up on that, from your perspective, is it more specific agencies for a specific task, or is it more beneficial for agencies to have multiple tasks to be able to work with your internal teams? Is that something that you've looked at, either again here or other companies you might have been at?
I mean, for me, just to make sure I'm answering the question, is that I get pitched by agencies all the time, and a lot of them say they do everything, and that usually just turns me off, because it's like, you can't be the best at everything. So I have gone to work with partners that are very strong and have expertise in certain disciplines, because if I wanted to kind of, and not to say this is the case, but I could build a mediocre team, but if I really want to get that expertise and the best, if it's through our post-purchase or, our email provider or our influencer or some podcasts, like, I want to find expertise. So I do think kind of the agency model where you've got more of that boutique and specialization has worked better for me.
I completely agree with that. And I think, for example, a lot of our brands don't even have loyalty programs, and that's something that I really believe in, first of all. And secondly, I think you really do need like to work with a partner that's all they do. And so they get like the whole evolution of how you launch a program and what you need to think through, and the reward structure of that, and how you're communicating with the audience. So I definitely believe that it does depend on the competencies that you're looking for. And I also agree that I don't think there's a one-stop shop. So.
Right. That makes a lot of sense. Questions and answers. Steve, I think we're up to that.
Yeah. We have time for questions.
Hi, thank you so much for a great panel. I think it's very interesting. I had a question to Jadey about Curology. I think it's a great product. I never tried it myself, but I heard a lot about it. I'm just wondering, you have the dermatologist on the other end, right, who answers all the questions. Do you guys have them in-house? So how do you source the doctors' technical opinions to answer all the questions of the consumers, which can have like millions of issues with the skin, or I don't know, they can have like, after they use the product, they would have some, I don't know, skin would go worse, and would it be the same dermatologist, or do you have them in-house, or outsource them? How do you manage that? Thank you.
Yeah, really good question. The easy one is, yes, they are in-house. We're based in San Francisco, but we also have a separate office in San Diego. We're growing so quickly, so just an interesting fact, we've basically hired like all of the people that we would want to hire in that market. So we're bringing on other medical providers from neighboring areas. And in terms of how to handle the communication, we really take pride in the personalization and the one-to-one connection, but we are exploring technology options. The engineering team is much better, the product team is much better at kind of distilling all the details, but that is not something that we would lean kind of like completely to on the tech side, because one of the key point of difference is kind of that we're not AI, and so it's pretty core to what we would definitely not want to lose.
Good morning, Dan Kidd with Data Wallet. I had a question for the panel. There's a varying backgrounds and different sizes of companies and stuff. How does innovation and technology versus commodity product fit into the spectrum of whether you outsource or try to tackle new innovation internally?
I'll try to take that one. So, I mean, I think from being at a small company and where we are brand led, innovation's actually been a little bit easier sometimes at a smaller company because you don't have to break down as many barriers or go through a lot of hoops. And so innovation from us has kind of come from, how do we tell our story? How do we talk about our product? How do we create a unique experience, which is things we're working on right now. To me, the innovation can really kind of then stems from bringing some of those people in-house because they're passionate about the brand. And I would say a brand like TomBoyX, our team is very passionate that work with us because they want to be there, they believe in the product, they believe in the vision. So innovation from us has kind of been like, how do we tell a unique story and be more brand-led? And, then people will come and, they believe in you so much that they'll want to buy the product. So not sure if that's to answer your question, but I kind of look at it more from where we're kind of developing our content and storytelling.
One last quick question. So Nolan Simons, Adobe Ad Cloud TV. I'm also based in San Francisco. I just have a quick question. What role do you guys see video taking in 2019? Because it is so trackable. You can use so much data for targeting and measurements. I'm just curious what your thoughts are on video.
A lot of our brands do have a huge appetite for video. And again, I think in the CPG industry, it's kind of a different environment because, again, they're so focused on driving sales. But I'm really passionate and trying to infuse into the different brands that you need to have that play to build that relationship with the customer. Video is so huge because, and I'll give an example with Annie's. So I work actually out of the Annie's Naturals office in Berkeley. which is mac and cheese and a bunch of different snacks and things. Their customers are so loyal and so passionate, but they have a lot of dietary products and that are very specific. So to me, it's very much a lifestyle brand, right? So it's those people that are we call them kid balancers, and so it's parents that they want to give their kids healthy snacks or healthy food, but they also want their kids to eat it, So it's like video, and clearly. So video, I think, is hugely important because you can tell the story, and it's about that lifestyle, maybe showing kids playing in the park, and they've got their little Annie's gummies in their backpack and things like that. So I think video is hugely important.
Yeah, video is huge for us too. Just to give a sense of where we're investing dollars into creative, we started off with 2 video interns, and now we just have a fully fleshed out video team. We're bringing on even sound people. We're no longer paying just for music. We want our own because the creative team feels strongly about it. And kind of when we think about ROI, we see it and again, there's just more and more needs. I think for us, it's more about how do you balance the business needs and also keep the creatives happy. And that's kind of when it goes down to your content strategy, right? Buckets of, this is what will keep the lights on. Please keep doing it. And then you reserve 5 to 10% where they go wild. And that's kind of also what would propel the brand forward. So yeah, it's huge. And everyone's having a lot of fun with that, so yeah.
Hi, thank you so much, Jason Daly from Facebook. Lori, you talked about percentage fee compensation models. I'm curious if anyone on the panel has explored other kind of compensation models with outside partners, pay for performance, subscription models, anything like that.
I mean, I have in my past. I've seen all kinds of different models. I would say the percent of media has been probably the most common as lately, or a retainer, depending on the kind of company. I mean, we obviously have a lot of PR and our SEO are on retainer, but on kind of the performance, I mean, the rev share I've seen done in the past, but I would say most of the time lately it's been kind of on the media.
Hi, I'm Haley from Kenshu. I was just wondering if Amazon was a channel that you guys were growing or going into.
I'll say yes. I can't really talk about it, but yes.
And I would say we're starting to evaluate.
Maybe.
And I'll just say that working with a number of brands, emerging what we call rising star brands, there's a huge appetite for figuring out DTC strategies on their own site in addition to a strategy with Amazon. So yeah, it's a hot topic for sure.
And we're going to move this into a roundtable discussion in about 2 minutes. Rich and panel, thanks very much.
Thanks.